Tom Savage of Three Red Kings. Tom, it was a good start to the Champions Cup for Munster. Harlequins at Thomond Park on the Sunday evening. We, of course, are travelling down from Croke Park, so we're only kind of listening in on the match. 21-7, when you look at the scoreline, looks like a convincing win. And, obviously not a bonus point, which is something you would be kind of looking to hunt at home, especially in a group with fewer amount of home games, and also in groups where a lot of it is outside of your control, with other teams possibly picking up bonus points owing to the structure of the competition. So a good win, a good result, but the nature of this competition this year is that you really have to pick up maximum points as much as you can.
Yeah, it's one of those strange ones where if you lose at home on your opening day, then the chances of you qualifying are very slim. It's one of those ones where, like, you look at Bristol, for example, are really under the gun now. Montpellier more than likely will lose complete interest in this tournament. It's very strange. With a 6-game pool, a loss at home at the start hurts really bad, but it isn't fatal. So for Munster, winning first and foremost was the best thing that they could have done with regards to, and I suppose that's obvious every year. But you look at, for this particular year, you could say, is a lack of a bonus point a killer? I don't know. I think the next 2 games are going to be the deciders. By that point, I think Harlequins, their interest in the tournament may be ended. And for Munster, it's going to be 2 games against Claremont before Christmas and after Christmas. This coming week in the Stade Marcel Michelin is going to be a huge test for Munster. Biggest test, I would say, I'd say since last year against Saracens, when it comes to, a game that is must perform. They have to get at least a losing bonus point. A win would be fabulous, but they'll live with a losing bonus point. To come away out of the first 2 games with 5 points, will it be enough? They will have to beat Claremont at home, as in that is non-negotiable, and then beat Harlequins away. That's their route to a possible a home and away quarterfinal. So it's a tough one. There is no wiggle room from now on. It is must have a losing bonus point in this game, and then it's 2 wins from the last 2. But the game itself,
it sounds ridiculous as well, Tom, that we're talking about a 21-7 home victory in the opening round against a decent Quins side, and despite a 21-7 win, we're still talking about being in almost last chance saloon territory from here on out. Well, I guess that's just peak 2020, isn't it?
It is, but it's not last chance saloon. But you look at the easiest route to the final, where you want to have it in your own, or the quarterfinals rather, where you want to have it, your destiny in your own hand. Must have a point this weekend. Must have a point. A win makes things very, very handy coming in. Obviously, they'll have to back that up with a win again against Claremont and Thomond, but that might damage Claremont's interest in that fixture, make things a little bit easier. But it's just a very weird tournament this year. You can't deal directly with the teams who are, going to be who you're competing for, places with in this big giant pool we're all in. So it's a difficult one, but it's one where I think that, Munster, with regards to a test of where the squad is at, they've got a few injuries and a few, injuries that they picked up in that Harlequins game. But it's a one where I think that this is a big tester for the squad against a good Claremont side, but who I think Munster stack up actually quite well with.
Yeah, go back to the game of the weekend, Tom. What impressed you about Munster? I like the work off the maul and the set piece. I think we ground Quins down there in particular, which I won't say surprised by, but I just thought that our efficiency in the line out maul and set piece was really, really where it needed to be, especially in European competition. Hard to get tries, not as much space as you will probably have in Pro 14. So it's all about maximising those kind of, visits to the 22. You mightn't have as many of them, but when you get there, you have to make a count. I thought Munster did a pretty good job on that the last day.
They were pretty good. There was a few line-out flubs. Weather conditions played a part. It wasn't exactly the nicest day, but that seems to be always the way now in Thomond Park in December. There's always a game where weather conditions are incredibly difficult. You look at the way Munster handled that first half, playing into the wind. They hung onto the ball well. They didn't spread the ball too wide. Again, they were wary of greasy conditions, blustery wind. It was lashing rain at times as well. They kind of had to play a lot of ball in hand, and what they did do, I thought, was very good. They had some nice forward interplay, got over the gain line quite well. Set piece was good. They had a few errors, though. You look at that penalty kick dead by Hanrahan in the 20th minute. That set off an entire 12 minutes of Harlequins basically being in control of the game. It's one of those things where a small moment combined with another error, on the very next play leads to something else. That control of the middle third of the field is hugely important. And Munster gave up that control in that moment, and Harlequins played with the impetus for the next 12 minutes. Munster were able to resist them by the skin of their teeth. 2 missed Harlequins penalties, 1 disallowed try for a forward pass. You look at the way Munster responded then, I thought was quite good. Second half, I think, was influenced by the lack of a decisive try in the first half. I think that kind of put the bonus point where you really had to start well in that third quarter to get that bonus point. But I think Munster missed out. They didn't control that opening.
Yeah, I suppose the one disappointing thing is we didn't really put ourselves in the frame to be, you want to have you want to have 2 tries racked up by the 60th minute. You want to be going into the final 20, trying to maybe get 2 good field positions, score off a line out, score off a maul, score off that sort of set play where it's a bit easier than trying to conjure bonus point tries out of nowhere. And I think we just left ourselves under the pump and under a bit of pressure to try and do that. I mean, if you look at any of the typical European games where Munster get bonus points, especially in the big ones at home, we usually have 1, if not 2 tries racked up by half time, and then you're kind of plotting your way methodically through the next 40 minutes to see where you're going to pick up the other 2. Just left ourselves with a bit too much work to do in that second half, despite plenty of positives.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you look at Harlequins are a well coached side. There's no mugs involved coaching these guys. They were going to try and hang on to the ball as much as they could in that second half. They were down players for the guts of 30 minutes. And when teams are like that, they're not going to kick the ball back to you. They're going to try to hang on to possession as much as possible, cheese the clock if they can. And they did that quite well. When you combine the fact they were playing into the wind, Munster had to work hard to get the ball back, and then Munster's minutes in possession became quite expensive. So when it came down to, maybe you score a try in that opening 10-minute sin-bin period of the second half, maybe then you're on for hunting after a bonus point. But I think Munster didn't control that opening third of the game very well. The opening the third quarter of the game. They didn't control it very well, and they were kind of playing a little bit reactively. And from there, I think Munster 100% improved in the last quarter. I think they really drove it on there. They left a few opportunities out there, even in that time, that could have led to, chasing for a bonus point in the last, 5 or 10 minutes. But I think they'll be happy enough overall. Some aspects of the performance will be quite disappointing. They'll be very disappointed to lose Ben Healy for an indeterminate number of weeks after he was, let's call a spade. Like, they went flying after him, trying to take him out of the game. 2 late shots. That kind of work wasn't there in the opening half when Munster had a fair bit of possession. So they were looking to go after Ben Healy. They were looking to try and get him out of the game. But every time they targeted him or targeted Casey, Healy punished them. He landed a 55-meter penalty, just banged the ball over. You look at the Casey taken out in the air by Marcus Smith. Healy just launched that ball into the corner. Munster scored a try a few minutes later. But it's a shame to see him. He's waiting for an MRI and a shoulder injury. They're not sure how long he's going to be out. Generally, when you see a fella going for an MRI, it's not the best thing. It's like hard to say what it could be really. But either way, he won't be featuring this weekend, which is incredibly disappointing for him. I think he's been an outstanding feature of Munster's season so far, and there's a lot of speculation around him at the moment as well. But it's just one of those things that when you see players getting targeted like that for off the ball stuff, look, it's part of the game. But when it's a young player like that, it doesn't make it any more sore when he has to miss, a game against Claremont, possibly the home Interpro against Leinster. These are all moments that will be missed, where Ben Healy could have continued to add to the fantastic start to the season he had.
What exactly is the injury diagnosis with Ben Healy or the
It's
time
a
frame?
shoulder injury. They have to go for an MRI yet to look at the severity of it. But Munster were fuming after the game. Johan van Graan was furious about the way that he was targeted by Alex Dombrandt and by Joe Marler. I think Joe Marler could have possibly seen a yellow card as well. Quins' discipline just let them down. I think they were looking to be physical. I think there's this idea that if you start getting very, very physical with Munster, that they'll start to, pull back a little bit. Didn't seem to work in this one. Certainly didn't make Ben Healy back down from landing crucial moments. But I think I think Munster overall, they'll be happy enough with how they performed. But this weekend will be the big test.
Yeah, there's also if you look at the way those pools are structured, obviously it's Munster, Harlequins, and Claremont. Claremont played Bristol this weekend, but who's Munster's game? The game that they have outside of that group. They do have another fixture, don't they?
No, it's only they only have two. They have Claremont home and away, Harlequins home and away. That's the 4 games. If they qualify for the top 4, they'll go into a home quarter, or they'll go into a home and away quarter final. That'll be the home and away part is the extra part of the campaign.
Okay, yeah, it's just when you see Claremont winning at the weekend, you're wondering how that comes into play for Munster's group, but it actually doesn't. Okay, Tom, we saw also the draw for for Ireland's World Cup prospects in 2023, and I put it to you that bar that we've set of getting beyond the quarter final looks as far away now as it ever did. Our reward for beating Scotland and even finishing second in that pool would most likely be a game against New Zealand in the quarter final. If we were to beat South Africa and win the group, depending on how it went in the other, it could be France. So 2 huge pool games to entertain, and then the possibility of France and New Zealand in a quarter final. Considering the kind of curve or the trajectory that the Irish national team is on at the moment, I wouldn't be putting the house on Ireland going beyond the quarter final right now.
Yeah, just the current world champions in the pool. You look at Scotland. Ireland have beaten them consistently. Doesn't mean it's going to continue to go. To continue to be that way into the future. But, I think we could have quite a similar pool to the last World Cup. When you look at the European and other teams that could be added, it could be Russia, it could be Samoa in there again. Which again is a bit of a lack of variety, but at least there won't be too much in the way of surprises. That game against the Springboks is going to be very difficult. And when you look at Ireland, they've arranged a 3-test tour of New Zealand in 2022. That's going to be a big marker as to where Ireland are. And I think that, you look at with the World Cup pool now and everybody's pool being drawn, it kind of puts into focus where Ireland need to get back to a level where they can be considered even dark horses for this tournament coming up. Because I think, Ireland want to win a World Cup. To get beyond a quarter final, which is fine. But if you go on and lose a semi-final, there's not much joy in that either. Like you said there, France, New Zealand, 2 incredibly difficult teams. Already you can see France are going to be just an absolute nightmare to deal with over the next number of years. New Zealand, they're always good. But again, you look at how France are developing in particular. If France can get the last 2 great under-20 teams that they had together, working with the talent they already have there, they're going to be just so difficult to deal with. They're going to be a world power in a way that France haven't been for a number of years. New Zealand, again, I think are going through a small bit of transition themselves. But again, that's going to be an incredibly difficult game. Never mind the Springboks, who have a few players I think that they will have to replace by the time that comes around. They, again, will be building in new structures, that they're going to look to try and develop as well. By that stage, we could be looking at a Pro 16, so maybe Ireland will have a little bit more experience of dealing with that Springbok talent in a way that maybe we don't now. But again, up until very recently, Ireland were beating the Springboks. Whether we can get back to that level again, I think depends on how well we utilise some of the young talent that's coming through. There's lots of talent there over the course of the last number of under 20 years. There's been, under 20 Grand Slams. I think Ireland would have won another Grand Slam this year. How they would have gone in the Under-20 World Championship always seems to depend on injury. But, you you look at the talent that's there, that's coming up in the provinces. Those guys, I think, need to be utilised into test level very quickly and to see what they're about, because, I think that for Ireland to get from where we are at the moment to where we want to be, there's got to be a lot of new faces come in and to show what they've got at test level.
Yeah, absolutely. It does, I suppose, put an added pressure on not just this Six Nations, but the next kind of cycle, to see how many of these Irish players we can, bring in and get up to speed by the time 2023 comes around. Like there is quite a few positions that will need changing and that we'll have to see guys step up in the next couple of years. So, it's 2023 sounds like a long time away, but in rugby terms, it's actually not. It
really isn't. Like, I mean, you look at
not where you consider the age profile of some of our big players, that I would question whether, let's say, a replacement for Johnny Sexton, for example, is the one that's kind of staring everybody in the face. Like, ideally, if you want to get somebody up to standard and up to speed for 2023, if you're going to go with one of the younger guns, then you have a big decision to make for this year's Six Nations. And we all know how important the Six Nations is to the IRFU from a point of view of funds, of money, of gates, of all that goes with it. It's not an easy one to get your head around.
It's complex, and there's a lot of complex decisions that have to be made at the moment. I think from the IRFU's perspective, I think they've documented very clearly the financial challenges that they've had this year. They will want to get their financial reserves back to a decent place to make sure that they are, solvent going forward, and to have that solidity. They've got some increases in income this year with the Pro 14. There's a sale and that with the CVC. They've got some money in from that. There's also some talk of the Six Nations, but either way, the IRFU are going to be looking after the pennies here, and like that means that there's some difficult decisions to make. There's guys who are at the moment who are on very high grade contracts they were signed at the peak of the financial arms race, I suppose, that's been going on over the last number of years. Now, you would think that there's a correction that's going to have to happen there at some point.
Sorry, Tom.
But everybody is kind of holding their breath, because the correction has to happen at some point. You already see it up in Glasgow Warriors at the moment, where Adam Hastings has turned down a new contract there. He will be joining Gloucester next season. So that looks like it's a bit of a restructuring. I'd look at a guy like Hamish Watson as another fella who they'll be looking at and kind of going, well, he'll be looking for a certain amount of money. Maybe we can't offer him that anymore. The Scottish Rugby Union will be thinking this. The IRFU are kind of in a similar boat. Wouldn't say that the financial constraints are as tight as what they would be in Scotland, but you look at, the guys who the IRFU have up for contract renewal this year: Tyke Furlong, CJ Stander, Peter O'Mahony, Johnny Sexton, Ian Henderson is another one as well, I think, who's coming up. They are all big players who are on big money, signed on, I think CJ and Peter O'Mahony are coming to the last leg of a 3-year deal they signed. Back when all those rumours about Montpellier were swirling and all the rumours about all these other clubs. It's a different landscape now. And you look at, I suppose, what would make financial sense for the IRFU would be that maybe you don't keep all those top tier players. Maybe you get rid of some of the guys who might be considered not necessarily certain starters for the provinces, but you would call them senior players, guys who might not be in the Irish bubble. They're fellas that you might look at as being, well, those guys, maybe we can make some savings there, and then invest in that under 20 core that's been coming up over the last 2 or 3 seasons. Your Ryan Bairds, your John Hodnitz, your Gavin Coombs, your Craig Casey's, your Ben Healy's, your Jack Crowley's, your Harry Burns, your Scott Penny's, all these guys. It makes a lot of sense for the IRFU to kind of put their focus on that, and to have that be their, be a way where they can reduce outgoings and maximize the talent that's coming up there. I think David Nucifora was speaking recently, and he just kept on mentioning under 20 talent, young talent. And that seemed to me to be setting the table for, well, we won't be able to keep a lot of these top guys who are on big money. And it's a very difficult one. I think the big question, I think, is the question at 10. Johnny Sexton will be one of the best paid players in the country by a mile. He's also one of the older fellas in the Irish squad. I think he's actually probably the oldest Irish squad member at the moment. Also the Irish captain, also Leinster captain. You look at that question and you go, you've got Harry Byrne, who looks like a fabulous young player. You look at him, you look at Ross Byrne, who's at Leinster as well, and go, well, look, Ross Byrne didn't really have a fantastic showing, I think, over the last number of international games. You look at that and go, if Johnny Sexton stays on for, because he says he's going to play until the next World Cup, you look at the decision there and go, well, like, do you re-sign him? And if you re-sign him, knowing that he's Johnny Sexton, like, this isn't the guy, Johnny Sexton's not a fella who's going to be letting anybody take over his role as the main man for Ireland without a fight. So you look at that aspect of it and go, is that the best thing for Harry Byrne? Is that the best thing for Ben Healy? The big question at the moment is Glasgow have huge interest in Ben Healy. They're looking at him because they know Adam Hastings is going now. So they're going to make Ben Healy more of a focus for them. So the question for Ben Healy is, do I see myself as being the starting guy for Munster? Are Munster ready to offer me that? Are the IRFU going to give me a path to test level? Because Scotland seem to be offering the farm on him. But if I was Ben Healy, I'd be looking at that and thinking, well, Adam Hastings is 24 years of age. He's got 22 Scottish caps right now, yet he doesn't think that Glasgow are the best thing for him going forward. So why should it be for Ben Healy? Yeah. That would be what I'm thinking. But you look at the questions that are around that 10 jersey for Ireland, because again, 10 is so important. If you're going to say to Johnny Sexton and sign him on a new 2-year deal, or like that would take him up to, maybe after the World Cup in 2023.
I'll put it this way, Tom. If you were dropped down from outer space and you had you had no red tinted glasses on, and somebody showed you the potential out halves to succeed Johnny Sexton at the moment, who would be the guy that you'd be putting the money on?
Well, there's two things I'd look at.
Short term and long term, I suppose.
I would look at what Harry Byrne has done at Leinster and how he was fancied at under 20 level. And look at that and go, okay, big talent in that young guy. They rate him very highly, higher than Ross. But I also look at Ben Healy, a guy who seems to have grasped every chance that's come his way, has made big pressure kicks in big moments. It's not all about kicking, but I see a guy there who's looks like he's got quite a complete game. So again, you'd look down and you would say Harry Byrne has the under 20 caliber. You would say he was the guy who they tended to fancy at under 20 level. You'd imagine that he'll be at least given that chance. But I would say that if Ben Healy takes over in the next season, like including this year, as Munster's number 10, he will, if Johnny Sexton is retained for 2 years, will be playing more big games than Harry Byrne. So there will be more of a body of work there for Ben Healy. And again, we don't know what's going to happen with Joey Carberry. We don't know what's going to happen there. So all of a sudden then you've got a situation where now you're making difficult decisions, because it's not just about Johnny Sexton for Ireland and Leinster. It also affects Harry Byrne's progression. And now, yes, he will get plenty of Pro 14 minutes. But I think Pro 14 minutes have to be they have to be kept in context as well with the opposition that you're generally going to be seeing, but also whether we're going to be in a Pro 16. What happens there? It's all set up. Squad sizes, I think, are going to get smaller, which means that everybody's going to have to make difficult decisions. Who are we keeping? Who can we not keep? Who is going to be like out of our range? Because I think that the IRFU are going to say to the provinces, you have reduced money now, so you have to make a decision. Because you look at Leinster, for example, haven't really had to make a whole load of decisions very recently when it comes to which talented player will I keep. They've tended to be able to keep all of them. I think the provinces in general are going to be told very soon, here's your budget, this is what you have to work with, this and no more, and that's it. And I think that there'll be a lot of very difficult decisions made over a lot of guys who are young players, who are squad players, and who are senior players. And that's all coming up. And it's like 10 is just the tip of the iceberg, but it's one of those ones where it's probably the most important part. So I like it again, it'll come down to who is playing the bigger role for their province. And that could mean Ben Healy has a bit of an advantage, assuming he signs a new contract at Munster.
Yeah, it's never straightforward, is it, Tom?
No, it's not. Everything's interlinked.
Tom, I suppose, look, we obviously know that Champions Cup time is a very busy time of the year for you. So, and of course, it's the lead up to Christmas. So, not only are you going to be hawking some of the coolest T-shirts around, but you're also going to be going hell for leather with the TRK premium content between now and the game at the weekend.
Yes, I will be looking in depth into ASM Clermont Auvergne this week, looking at where I expect them to look to try and get at Munster, where I think Munster can get at them. That's all coming up this week on TRK Premium, which is at patreon.com/TRK Kings for just €2 a month.
Plenty of stocking fillers on the website as well, Tom, for anybody, for the discerning Munster aficionado.
And if you want them after Christmas, because I am not dealing with the Christmas postal rush this year. So it's one of those things where...
Little Christmas, 6th of January.
That'll be it. Yeah. We'll arrange something for then.
Thanks, Tom.
No bother. Are you